Welcome to Danny Houlihan's Irish Experience podcast. Join Danny on a journey through the historical island of Ireland, its people and the wild Atlantic Way, which is Ireland's last frontier. Experience the music and the culture that makes up the longest coastal driving route in the world. Now, please welcome your host, Danny Houlihan.
Couldn't fall to good Slín Atlantic Ian. Welcome to the Wild Atlantic Way and Danny Houlihan's Irish Experience Show. Part 2 of Ballybunion Burning. Now everyone, we delve into the courtroom and a snapshot of that time and period. Dated Thursday 16th of July, in the newspapers, the Kerry News reports of the Kerry Assizes on Thursday. Presiding over the case was Lord Justice Ronan. This case was an appeal from the County Court, which dismissed a claim of £20 for the destruction of a reek of hay on the 21st and 22nd of March at Ballybunion, North Kerry, Ireland. During the court proceedings, it mentions the stacking of stones and the bringing of large stones from the beach and placed around the town in foot of these evictions. His Lordship intervenes by stating, quote, "and placed them up against the walls, ready for war?" Laughter from the court. "Yes," the witness replied, unquote. Notices had been erected around the town about Enright. His Lordship read the notices presented to him, quote, "that anybody having any dealing with the traitor Enright would be shot." Another poster placed in the town at that period read, quote, "that they would be overly dealt with and maybe ordering their coffin." Laughter erupted from the courtroom, unquote. This is just a taste of the case. I will add more to this in the future, but it does mention the impending evictions of female tenants and male, and the fact that the village was in a state of unrest due to the situation of the impending evictions. It should be noted, and I stated this before, that at that time, soldiers of the Leinster Regiment between 30 and 50 were stationed in tents near the newly built wireless station of Universal Radio Syndicate Limited of London. From the history of the area, we know that there were soldiers' barracks there and were 300 to 400 yards from the field where the reek of hay went up on fire. I've seen pictures of the tents of the regiment which prove provenance to the fact that they were there. It should be noted that this only heightened the intense feeling around the parish at that time. Eviction orders served on 10 tenants of the town. The local tenants were expected to see the sheriff march to Ballybunion at the head of a large army, we had been told up to 300, which had been requisitioned from Dublin. The tenants of Ballybunion had made all preparations for the purpose of resisting evictions, and their houses are barricaded and large stones are brought into the village and piled up there. 7 lady tenants in the town at that time, also Mr. Costello's wife. We go back to the courtroom again. His Lordship, "Are there writs against all the inhabitants?" Mr. O'Donnell replied, "About 14 tenants, I understand," unquote. We leave the courtroom once again and delve into the old, dusty, faded newspapers of the time. With another headline, "Ballybunion prepares for evictions." George Houlihan of Dromahare, County Leitrim, makes a statement on the conditions of the properties in the town, but the Ballybunion Town Tenants Association issues a warning to the authorities and the landlord. The Liberator newspaper, dated Saturday, 10th of July 1915, mentions a meeting that took place, chaired by the then PP Father Canon Fuller, in a house of one of the people to be evicted on Friday night. Quote, "It was found that the landlords never spent 1 penny on improvements, while the occupiers had spent hundreds of pounds." This next piece of information was related on the night by a Mr. Costello, DC, who himself, and the rest of the tenants being female in the town, stated the following, quote, "Houlihan of Dromahare was described as tyrannical and heartless George," unquote. The man who was responsible for the statement that the tenants left their houses deteriorate must be suffering from hallucinations. The quotation goes on to state what Houlihan threw at the residents. Who built their out offices? Who purchased the material for them? Who lost to the erection of their bakehouses? Whose money built their halls, paved their yards, and paled their premises? Who do we thank for the perfect sanitary arrangements and other costly installations in our premises? Is it George or the Scottish Company? It is, we don't think. Unquote. The heightened tension of the meeting now comes to the fore, and the feeling of the residents emerged from the meeting. Quote, now they come out and tell us that they will reap the reward of all our toil and all our industry and the suffering of our ancestors. Unquote. Now the last quote infers a mention to the bad times in the area of 1846 and Black 47, right up to the 1900s. The statement goes on. People were very upset at that meeting. And this is where Mr. Costello issues a warning to George Houlihan of Dromahare and the Scottish Provident Company. As seen in the newspapers, everybody, from the old tattered newspapers, this is what went on. Remember, everyone, these are not Danny Houlihan's words. These are the words of the founding fathers of the town. Quote, let them do it if they dare, said Mr. Costello, who was on his feet surrounded by the residents of the town. And we will use our remedy, our last remedy, one of which will leave a blister. Unquote. Ballybunion was on full-scale target of all-out war against the landlord and the Scottish Provident Company. And from the old newspapers of the time, we can get a sense of what happened on that night. We know that a statement was adopted, quote, that we repudiate the statement of George Houlihan, the managing director of SPIC, that the houses in question have in any way deteriorated during the occupancy of the tenants, unquote. This is now where the evictions are mentioned on the particular night. Quote, it was hinted that the eviction would take place the following Tuesday and that 300 police had been requisitioned for the occasion, and by what legitimate means their tenants resist the operations of the Crowbar Brigade, unquote. Everyone, just imagine 300 police sent into a small seaside resort to evict a few men and a few women from their houses, aided by the Leinster Regiment who were camped outside the town at the Universal Radio Syndicate's wireless station on Santal Road. Everyone, the younger generation to this day does not even know about this history, but after this podcast, I'm changing the situation and reinstating the balance in local heritage. Back to the meeting on the night. That we request all of our sympathisers in all parts of the kingdom to help us in every legitimate means in their power to resist evictions and to rally when the bugle sounds. Ballybunion was heading for war on full-scale collision with the local landlord and SPIC. It should be noted, and it was seen at that time in the newspapers, that the townspeople were not alone, that the Irish volunteers were on standby to resist any evictions in the town. There was going to be an ultimate bloodbath on the streets of the town. Once the meeting was over, the town tenants set into motion the fortification of the town, and the planning of barricades and obstructions to be put into position to halt and obstruct the march of the English military in uniform led by a sheriff. Obstructions were put into position around the village, which had been advised by fellow supporters from Tralee and Listowel. From what I was told, and now I can see in the old tattered newspapers of the time, the following was carried out, and we read in the newspapers of the day. Quote, through their relentless agent, have been very active and assisted by their many genuine sympathisers, barricading their homes with boulders drawn by scores of horses and carts, heartily laid at their disposal by the villagers possessed of same, as well as the farmers of the district, unquote. Now this is where we see the farming community, which was at that stage a small number in the area, backing the townspeople of Ballybunion. Not only did they have their accounts in the town and supported the town and shopped there, we now see when the problem of eviction arose, they were there to help the townspeople. This was not going to go down well with the landlords and Mr. Houlihan, as they had all those farmers under their fingers as well as their leases of their properties as well. So there would be repercussions for them. Or would there be? Or would the agents of the particular organisation sit back and put a plan to set both farmer and townspeople at loggerheads in the future? I wonder. One thing is for sure, one commodity that will cause this: sand and the strand. Both parties needed. Let my podcast now weave its story through the mists of time, and I will put this jigsaw puzzle together. Leading the local people, we now can get a feeling through the faded newspapers of the time and a few names who were there during this period. Quote, M.J. Flavin, their respected parliamentary representative, were in their midst, and together with their faithful pastor, the very Reverend Canon Fuller, who was there and who was trying to bring about a peaceful and amicable but honourable settlement. This is all supported by and acting on the instructions by the Central Executive, Mr. E.J. Gleeson of Listowel, organiser for the Kerry and Cork, under the Town Tenants Association, unquote. These are snippets from the quotations. On that fateful day of the evictions, the town took on another view, one of which was reported in the newspapers of the day as grotesque. Bushes, large trees and boulders blocked the main street with a high barricade, and the doors and windows of the houses were shuttered with large stones which were built up around the doors of the townhouses to halt the Crowbar Brigade and the march of the English army. I should note that some of the shutter hooks from that period are still on a few of the buildings in the town, which have not been noticed over the years. One reporter of the day stated that somebody with a camera should have taken a picture of it, as the place had a frightening appearance. Crowds gathered at the barricade, we have been told, during the morning time, led by Canon Fuller and the CC of the day, in full religious attire, crucifix raised in the air in defiance to the eviction, and the threat by George Houlihan of Dromahare, the Scottish Provident Company and their Crowbar Brigade, and the threat of the 300 military. The time of eviction came and went. No sound of English horsemen arrived, or the Leinster Regiment, which stayed in their tents at the wireless station on Santal Road. I may say, with their bottles of whisky. What happened? An eerie sense of victory descended in the afternoon in the village. What called back the forces of the British Empire? Would they, through military tactics with the Leinster Regiment, surround the village at night? What if? Night fell on the barricade in Ballybunion, and a quiet night. No sound could be heard in the town, owing to the lapping waves of the mighty Wild Atlantic Way along the shoreline of the famous seaside resort. On standby, though, were the Irish volunteer movement, who were there in the area and were ready to resist any such evictions, even at night. So everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, Ballybunion Burning Part 2, and I'll be back again with the final part, Ballybunion Burning Part 3, in the next week or so. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for supporting my podcast over the last few years. And just recently, we have been rated number 8 in Irish podcasts, which is very, very good. I'm very happy with it. So, from Danny Houlihan here, our studio Ballybunion Burning, the Shunana Kunde Giri, from the banks of the mighty Shannon River here on the Wild Atlantic Way, I say slán for now.
Thanks for listening to our show. Through its people, its heritage, and its rugged coastline, this is truly Danny Houlihan's Irish experience. Bye for now.